It's so good to see everybody here today. All our members, we're glad to have you here today. And if you're watching online, if you're one of our members, or if you're looking for a church home, we would hope and pray that you would consider this church. I say this a lot, but I genuinely mean it. If you're looking for a church home, this is not a perfect church. And the reason is because there are people here. And all of us, starting with me, we are imperfect people. The good news, however, is God, when you are in a relationship with the Son Jesus, when you've embraced Jesus and entrusted your life to Him, He counts you like you're perfect. You're not, but He counts you like that. So if you're an imperfect person, please come and join us. This is not a perfect church, but it's a good church, and we're trying to follow God, and we're trying to follow His Word and do the best we can in this world. I want to remind you of this fall festival we have coming up on the 31st, on Halloween. That's Sunday from 6 to 8 o'clock. This is free to our community. It's a way to reach out to our community with a fun, safe night. We'll have free hot dogs, free drinks. Our gym will be all decorated up. Those pictures are there from past fall festivals that we've had in our gym. It's really good. What we want you to do, there is something we want you to do today, everybody, before you leave. On the counters out there in both foyers, this foyer and the foyer right over here, there are some little note card size invite cards. We've had 1,000 of them printed up. We want you to take some of those, and we want you to pass them out to young families who have kids in your neighborhood, at your work, or people that you know, because we want a full house that night. Here's why this matters. No, we're not going to teach a gospel sermon that night during the fall festival. That's true, we're not. No, we're not going to try to have set Bible studies up with people right there. No, we're not. We're planting seeds. Because a lot of people in this culture, they're very suspicious of churches. They think all churches want is their money. We don't want their money. We won't take it if they try to give it to us. This is free. We're trying to create a different atmosphere and a different mindset so that people will think of church as different. We're not trying to get anything from you. We're trying to give something to you. And it could just be that could be the entry point for some person or maybe a whole family to where they actually will listen and will join us, and then they could hear the gospel. And as a result of that, their whole eternity could be changed. So if everybody could do that today, take a little stack. Don't take more than you think you'll give away, because we only have 1,000 of them. But take some and pass them out to people that you know and invite them to come. It'll be a good time that night that we have. We're going to continue in our study. We're getting very close to the end. We're getting close to the end of the Gospel of Luke. We've been talking this whole year about the fact that we want to see Jesus. We want to see how Jesus was, how He thought, how He lived, how He acted, how He treated people. We want to see what His value system was, what His priorities were, so that we can have those same kind of values and we can have those same kind of priorities in our own life. Hopefully that's what all of us will do. And today we're going to talk about something that's really important, and I want to start off by asking this question. Who are you trying to please? You know, it's something we don't think about that much, but I mean, what is your life really about? What is the ultimate goal in your life? Or who are you trying to please? I love what Paul said one time. This is Paul just being honest. This is one thing I love about Paul. He said this in the book of Galatians. If I can get my PowerPoint to work here. There we go. He said, "Am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Am I trying to please people?" And then notice what he says. "If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ." He's basically saying there was a time in my life before I came to know Christ that what the goal of my life was, I was trying to please people. That's what my whole life was about. I was looking for the applause of other people and what they thought about me. He said, you know what though? That's not what my life is about now. That's not who I'm trying to please. I'm not trying to be noticed by other people and to gain their approval and their applause. Paul was living his life for an audience of one. He only cared what that one thought about him. And of course, hopefully, that is the goal in all of our life today. I love this quote that Dave Ramsey made. Dave Ramsey is known, he's a Christian on Nashville radio. He's all about getting your finances in order, has some very sound, solid advice. He said this one time. He says, "We buy things that we don't need with money that we don't have to impress people we don't even know or like." And we do that sometimes because we care. We call it keeping up with the Joneses, or in my family, keeping up with the Williamses, right? We try to keep up with we don't even know these people. We're trying to impress these people, and we overextend ourselves sometimes because that's who we're trying to please. We're trying to create an image. So we all need to ask ourselves, who am I trying to please? Who do I really care who is watching me? Which leads us into our text today from Luke's Gospel. This comes from chapter 20. Now notice what Jesus says. Jesus said some amazing things. Beware of the teachers of the law. He's talking about religious people. He's talking about people like me. Beware of some people like that, because they like to walk around in flowing robes, and they love to be greeted with respectful greetings in the marketplaces, and they love the most important seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at the banquets. See, there were some religious people then, and this is really an indicting statement. And this is something that all of us who are religious, we need to think about. Hopefully the reason we're here today is not because we want to be seen by anyone else. It's not because we're trying to make some kind of contacts for our business or anything like that. It's because, hopefully, our mindset is, I want to honor God, the one we've just sung about, the one who is the one, the only God who is alive. He is the true, the only living God. You're the one, you're the only one. And hopefully we're here to honor and please Him regardless of where anyone else knows we are here tonight. So Jesus says this to these religious people because sometimes people like me and people like you who are religious, you're obviously here, you're religious, sometimes our motives and our mindset can get off track a little bit. And we need to have it kind of retract, you might say. And then Jesus says, He says, these religious people, look at what they do. They devour widows' houses. And for a show, they make lengthy prayers. And He says they will receive the greater condemnation. Here's what He means when He says they devoured widows' houses. At that time, some of these religious leaders, they served as financial advisors and estate planners for the elderly and for older people. And for some distraught widow who didn't know very much, she might be able to be taken advantage of by one of these religious leaders. And they would therefore bilk her out of all her retirement savings, enticing her to give it all to the temple or give it all to them in their own private ministry. And Jesus says, they're doing all this for a show, making lengthy prayers, they're devouring widows' houses, and when you do that, you're going to receive the greater condemnation, He says. One of the things that we taught our daughter when she was little, fortunately she still keeps this value. We taught her, you never take advantage of people. People that are susceptible, people who are easily fooled, you never take advantage of people. You always stand up for people who cannot stand up for yourselves. You never take advantage of them. You're always looking to bless other people. You never take advantage of other people. Unfortunately, that's a good value that she still has. They cheated them out of their inheritance. That's a sad commentary on someone who's supposed to be religious and devoted to God, isn't it? Some of these preachers today need to hear that. There are preachers today, I want you to know, I want to be clear, if you're here today, I'm not one of these. I don't make $1 gazillion, in my salary. We live in a very normal house, and we have one car between the two of us. It's a 2012 model Toyota Camry that's paid off and has over 100,000 miles on it. And other than these real fancy clothes I got at that upscale French boutique J.C. Penney, other than that, we live a very, very simple kind of life. But there are preachers, as you know, who ought to be, quite honestly, ashamed of themselves. Making millions, tens of millions of dollars, living in a giant mansion and driving fancy cars and wearing watches that cost more than a year's salary. I can't see Jesus doing that at all. In fact, that's not what I see Him doing when I read my New Testament. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. And then I want to point something out here because this matters. The context where Jesus is doing this teaching takes place in the temple courts. You see a diagram here of the temple courts here. The temple had these courts around it. And outside, it's not pictured here, but out here was called the court of the Gentiles. Gentiles, if you were a non-Jewish person, you could only go that far. And then there were other places in that temple. The more seemingly important you were, the closer you got to the Holy of Holies, which is right here. In this building, the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant was and all that, only the high priest could go in there, and he could only go in there once a year. But where our story today is taking place is right here in the Court of Women, it's called. And you see right here, it says the treasury. On either side of the Court of Women that would have been visible to people who were in that court. This is where the women could go, and they couldn't proceed any further. They couldn't go through this gate into here where men and the priests could go. They could only stay right in here. But along these walls, it says treasury. And here's what was along the outside of those walls of the Court of Women. There were these big receptacles. They were made out of brass for collecting money. They were shaped kind of like a big funnel. They had a narrow opening at the top and big down at the bottom. And when people were in this court, they would come in and they would put their offerings in these. So this is where Jesus is doing this teaching, and this is where he's going to say these comments that come up next. As Jesus looked up, he's here in this court of women. He looked up and he saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury. And he also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. There's all these people milling about. Keep in mind, this is at Passover time. Where we're at here in Luke's gospel is the last week of Jesus' life. He's about to be crucified just in a few days. And so all these people, millions of them, have come from all around the countryside to come to the temple to celebrate and to keep the Passover. And Jesus is in there and he's making these comments and he's doing this teaching. And as he does that, he says, he sees the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury, and he sees a poor widow put in 2 small copper coins. Now I want to demonstrate this, probably what this was kind of like here. I brought this little metal bucket. The buckets they would have had, there were 13 of them around this temple complex, around the Court of Women. They had 13 of these big brass buckets for collecting the money. And as Jesus is watching this, he watches the rich. And here's what the rich do. The religious people, they come in with a big bag of money, and this is a big metal can. And think about what this sounds like. They're doing this. And everyone would look at that and they would hear, look at all that money they put in. And they would be oohing and awing, and they would get their applause from the people because, after all, that's who they're trying to please. At the same time, there's a poor widow that comes up. Nobody notices her. She has a cloak over her head. She gets up very humbly and very quietly, and she walks over and she does this. No one notices. No one pays attention. But Jesus does notice it. Notice what Jesus says. Truly I tell you, he said, this poor widow's put in more than all the others. All these other people gave their gifts out of their wealth. But she, out of her poverty, she put in everything that she had to live on. I think this is one of these amazing stories in the Bible where something that seems so minute, something that seems so inconsequential, Jesus stops everything and he says, did you see that? Did you see what this widow did? She goes over and she puts in these 2 small copper coins. Jesus notices because he sees what's in her heart. He notices the condition of this woman's heart. And what she was really saying is, she's not saying it out loud because she's just living for an audience of one. She's living for God. In her heart, she's saying, God, I don't have much. This is all I have. But it's really coming from my heart. I'm just trying to say I love you, so here. And when Jesus sees that, Jesus is seeing her motives. He's seeing what's in her heart. And it's pleasing to Jesus, where these grand offerings of others who were putting in far greater sums, but their heart wasn't right because they just wanted others to notice. Jesus says she's put in more than all. And an important principle here, and this is for all of us to keep in mind, God doesn't see the portion that you put in. He does see the proportion. Not everybody is wealthy. Not everybody has a lot of money. And when you give to God, and we're talking right now, there's other means of giving, but when we're talking giving financially to God, You might only put $20 in the offering plate, for example, but proportionately, that might be actually a lot for you. And someone else might put in $500 a week, but proportionally, you may be giving actually more than them. It's all about our heart. What is in our heart? What are the motives of our heart? And so the thing I'm trying to say, which is what I think Jesus is trying to get across to us today, is this right here. A little is a lot to God when it is given from the heart. You might be in here right now, well, I can't give much. God understands that. He understands your particular situation. But what he's looking at is proportionately, does it really say that your heart is into it? If it is, God really accepts that sacrifice. And so I think that's very important for all of us to know. Sacrifice and generous giving, what it comes from trust in the Lord. What this woman was doing, notice she put in these 2 small copper coins. It says that's all she had to live on. She didn't have anything else left. That shows she really trusts God. She says, God, I'm going to give this to you. And the reason I'm doing it is because I trust you. I trust that even though I give everything I have, you're going to provide for me. You're going to take care of me. That shows someone who has a very, very mature relationship with their Lord. I found this quote this week, and I love this. It says, the more you give, the more is going to come back to you, because God is the greatest giver in the universe, and he won't let you outgive him. I've found that to be true over the years. If you give a lot to God, God's going to bless you for it. It's going to come back to you. God's not going to let you outgive him. And when he sees that your heart is right and you're giving genuinely to him, he's just going to bless you with more and more ability to provide for yourself and also to be able to provide for others through giving. And I found this quote also, and I think it's really good. It says, you can give without loving, but you cannot love without giving. Now, those of us who have children know this is true. Parents give so much to their children, not only money-wise, but money too. I've read a lot of articles that say that by the time your child is out of your house at 18, I know some of you it's lasted longer than that, but you know. By the time they're out of your home at 18, you've spent close to $200,000 on them. I would say, yeah, that's kind of what it feels like. That's probably about accurate. And it doesn't bother me at all. Our daughter, there's no telling how much money we've spent on her to provide for her, to clothe her, to feed her, to provide health insurance, to help her get through part of the college that she got through before she got sidetracked and got married and all that. Not that I'm holding that against her, but anyway, it's another story. But I was glad to do it. This is our daughter. This is our only child. You can't love without giving. What would it say if no, I'm not giving you anything. That wouldn't say much. But a little is a lot to God when it's given from the heart. I love this great verse in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 10. Jesus says, if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones who is my disciple, truly I tell you, that person will certainly not lose their reward. Even if you give a little cup of water to someone, that doesn't seem like much, does it? Jesus says it could be a big deal. And if you're doing it from a good heart, a good motive, God notices that. He notices the little things that we do. He noticed this widow when nobody else noticed it. Now, I love this great verse in 2 Corinthians. Paul says, I can testify. He's talking about these people in Corinth. He's talking about their generosity and their heart. He says, they gave not only what they could afford, but they gave far more. And they did it of their own free will. They begged us again and again for the privilege, he says, of sharing in this gift for the believers in Jerusalem. See, there were some people in Jerusalem that were going through a famine. They didn't have enough to eat. They couldn't even take care of their basic necessities. And so Paul was going around taking a collection to give to them, to help them. And he says, they did even more than we had hoped. And here's why. Because he says their first action was to give themselves to the Lord and to us just as God wanted them to do. The reason people give then and now is because they first give themselves to the Lord. And so once again, this is the point. A little is a lot to God when it's given from the heart. Now, we've been talking about finances today, and I'm going to shift gears here in just a second, and we're almost at the end of our lesson, but I want to make some real practical application from people that we all know. Our money, the way we use our money, does say something about our heart to God. Because money is important in this world, as we all know. I find it very handy to pay your mortgage payment, to pay your health insurance bill, to provide transportation and food and clothing, etc. Money's a big deal down here. And so when we give generously to God, it says that we are really, really bought into God. And if we give just a little to God, when it's given from our heart, if it's in proportion to our income, it might not be much, but it's really a lot in proportion to our income, it says a lot. I want to give you two examples from our church, and they're probably watching online right now, and they're probably going to be mad at me. Please forgive me, ladies, but you're a good example, and I have noticed, and I think God notices too. There's a lady who's a member of our church. She's not in here right now because of COVID. She has a job where she has to be very serious about that. Her name is Priscilla Hunter. Do y'all know Priscilla Hunter? Some of you do. She has a son named Isaac who graduated from high school about 2 years ago. He's now going through college, going to be a computer security expert, doing a good job. I'm sure right now they're watching online. They watch all the time. Priscilla, I want to tell you something. You impressed me. Here's why. She's a single mom. I have no idea how much she makes, but I don't think it's all that much. But here's what she does. Nobody notices this except me and my wife. Every week, she comes by this church building to drop off her offering. Every week. She makes it a point. She goes out of her, she comes in, and I don't know how much she gives. I don't look at the offering amount, but she gives an offering every single week. That impresses me. More importantly, that impresses God because it's really coming from her heart. Nobody knows except me. The only people that even ever see it are me and my wife. Nobody else knows. There's another lady who's a member of our church that most people don't know. She hasn't been a member of our church except for about 2 years, and she's likely watching online right now. And Diane, forgive me for saying this, but I have noticed this. There's a lady in our church. Her name is Diane Calhoun. A few of you know her. Most of you don't. An older lady going through a lot of difficulties. Recently, she and her husband of about 20-something years have gone through a difficult relational time. She doesn't have very much money. She also, every week, comes down here and drops off her contribution, even though she's living on a fixed income. I just want you to know, I have noticed that. And more importantly, God notices that. Now, there are other ways to give besides money, but I'm not diminishing the money part. That says a lot about it. There are other ways to give. We give of our time. We give of our service. And we all need to ask ourselves, are we doing that? Let me give you some more examples from some people in this church. Probably the oldest member of our church. She's not here right now. She's at home. She'll probably be watching this online later or listening to it on a tape later. Jimmy May Turner. Most everybody in here knows Jimmy May Turner. She's about 93, 94, 95 years old, something like that. Doesn't live too far from here. Here's what Jimmy May Turner does. Every time we have some kind of an event here, Vacation Bible School, the Fall Festival, we had an equipping seminar here a couple of weeks ago, an evangelism equipping seminar. Every time we have some kind of event, here's what she does. She'll call my wife, our church secretary. She'll call her on the phone. Hey, I want to make something. The way she contributes, she's a really good cook. Jakey's laughing. Here's what we used to do when we have Vacation Bible School. She makes this best little toffee stuff you've ever seen in your life. And she would bring that down here, have somebody pick it up for her house and bring it down here for Vacation Bible School. And before the kids would see it, me and Jakey and some of the elders would go in there and, we're getting some of that. She always wants to contribute, always like this. Here just 2 weeks ago, we're having this equipping seminar, and she had heard online and, through the bulletin, hey, we're having coffee and donuts that morning. She calls my wife, I want to make some homemade stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be fine. And is way better than the donuts we provide. She's just a giver. That says something about her heart. She didn't know I was going to say this today. She doesn't care if anybody knows. That's just the way she's wired. She wants to give to people. We need to ask ourselves, am I like that? There are other people in this church, too, who just give so much of their time and are servants. They're great examples to follow. I was hoping these two young ladies would be here today, but they're not here, but they'll probably watch it online. Y'all know Ashley and Miranda Morales? Two young Hispanic girls who usually sit right around where Wade and Alita are sitting right there. They're in there, one's in their 20s, one's in their early 30s. They have really impressed me recently, especially. They volunteered to teach one of our young kids' classes. Just took it upon themselves to teach the young kids' class. And Thurman could have testified to this. Ashley would take you this past summer, nobody knew it, when you needed help to go to the doctor's office, didn't she? To drive to Dallas, which is kind of scary, I understand. I was there yesterday. She volunteered to take you. Hey, I'll do that. He needs a ride to hey, I'll do that. And we're having a float in the parade for Oktoberfest here in a couple of weeks. They both volunteered. Yeah, we'll lead that. We'll organize that. We'll make sure that gets done. That impresses me. They're not doing it to get any kind of recognition from anybody. It's just they have a servant heart. There are other people at our church that really have a great servant heart. And nobody else, and y'all are probably going to get mad at me right now for pointing you out, but hey, I notice these things, and more importantly, God notices. Where's Buck and Patsy? There's Buck back there. There's Patsy. These people are servants. If our whole church, if we had people like them, if our whole church had the mindset of them, there's no telling what we would get done. It'd be insane. They just want to serve. They want to help all the time. We come down here every Wednesday night, and there's a free meal provided. Nobody has to do anything. You just show up, and if you have $2 per meal, you can pay for that. You don't have to do anything. We designed this so that it'll free your Wednesday evenings up so you don't have to fix stuff, so that you can come to church. A long time ago, I used to do all that myself. Set everything up, try to organize it, and it was getting to be a major deal. It's taking up a lot of my time. And I finally said, well, I need to delegate this to some other people. And they found out about it, and they said, oh, yeah, we'll do that. And I said, you'll do this? They said, no, we'll do all of it. And they do that every Wednesday. And they get down here early, and they set everything up, and they make sure the food is right. Just servants. Says a lot about their heart. And David and Susan Lyon, their heart, there's no telling how much time they spend down here serving to make sure our technology works right all the time. PowerPoint is a great enhancement to our service, and the microphones are a great enhancement to our service, and our website, and all these other things, putting the sermons online. They spend so much time. And when they go on vacation, please don't go on a 2-month vacation again, guys, like y'all did recently. Because the people that served in your behalf, they did a great job, but those people have all told me, gosh, I couldn't believe all the stuff they do. They're just doing things all the time. And every time there's work to be done, there's people like Buck and Patsy and Dave and Susan, they're always there. When there's work to be done, they're around. These are all good examples for us to follow. So once again, a little, even if it's just a little, even if nobody notices, God notices. It's a lot when it's given from the heart. And so what I want us all to think about as I conclude here today is, what about your heart? What does your heart and how you give, not only monetarily, but your time, of your service, what does that say about your relationship to God? And maybe as you look inside yourself, you'll say, you know what? I need to be much more of a giver. I'm too much of a taker. And maybe that's what God is laying on your heart today. If you need to respond to the Lord in any kind of way today, if we can pray for you and help you in any kind of way, maybe you're not yet a Christian and you want to become a Christian, we would love to help you see how becoming a child of God can benefit you in every way, not only your eternal life, but even your life right now. So if we can pray for you or counsel with you or help you in any way, please allow us to do that. Let's all stand together while Ken leads us in the song of encouragement.